Today's guest is Diane Taylor. Diane and I first met about 11 years ago as she was my conveyancing lawyer. We reconnected through a mutual business friend, and I got the sense Diane had a story to tell. I know Diane is someone who wants to help others, and today we will hear her story of how through martial arts training she discovered the surprising effects on her emotional health that went far beyond the physical act of training. Welcome to the WhyMe podcast, Diane.
Thanks, Vera. It's lovely to be here.
Have you ever had one of those gut-wrenching moments where life ground you to your knees and you found yourself asking in despair, why me? This podcast is all about sharing your stories and journeys, from asking why me to declaring this is why me. Discover how ordinary human beings like you and I have found their extraordinary levels of hope, courage, compassion, and provided a new perspective for greater potential and self-empowerment during their darkest defining moment. As a creative artist and coach myself, my guests and I discuss the interconnectedness of emotion and transformation in those moments, and how their actions then seize the opportunity for discovering their unfiltered and authentic voice, and ultimately their life's purpose. I invite you to join me each week as we share insights into how adversity can be turned into a unique advantage. I find it interesting when people come and go from our life and then reconnect at a later point in time under different circumstances. And this is what happened with Diane and myself. I first met her as my conveyancing lawyer when I purchased my home in the town I now live in. Fast forward 12 years and we reconnected through a mutual friend and business owner. Little did Diane know the domestic violence situation I had just left when I came to live in this town. Little did I know the domestic violence situation Diane was in at the time. Let's hear a little more about her story and how martial arts has not only allowed Diane to feel empowered, it's also given her immense achievement and ability to help other people connect deeply to themselves, their purpose in life, and a supportive community.
I guess the defining moment in my life that where things start, like the purpose of the podcast and talking about dealing with adversity, turning bad situation into a good one, is when I first started martial arts training. I didn't start training till I was 39 years old, and from the very first class, I knew that I'd finally found the place that I was meant to be in, the thing that I was meant to be doing. I was totally like a fish out of water. I felt like, I had no idea what I was doing, but I just knew that was my place. Like, I tried all sorts of fitness things. I only went there for fitness. I didn't even know women did martial arts. I had no clue. And I just went there looking for something to do to keep fit, because I'd tried everything else and was totally bored with it. And that's it. From that moment on, I was hooked. That's it. And it's become a big part of my life ever since then. So, yeah.
Wow. And which centre is it that you go to?
At the moment, I now train with Wickham's Martial Arts here in Echuca. But before that, it was with a different dojo, still in the same. We're part of the Bob Jones Martial Arts Organisation, which is just, that's 50 years old this year. So that's phenomenal. We were supposed to be having big celebrations and all of that, but of course with COVID, that's not happening. But it's a fantastic organisation to be part of. And I started with a different dojo in town, and then until that sort of wrapped up, and I did have a bit of a break there for a couple of years, and then went back to it later on. So, yeah.
And what discipline in martial arts is it that they do there?
It's we do karate, which is like Zendokai karate, which is a blend of lots of different styles of karate. I also train in Muay Thai from obviously Thailand, kickboxing, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as well as weapons training and things as well. So I've gone from being a white belt who knew nothing about martial arts at all to now training in multiple disciplines. I hold a not only instructor certification in Zendukai Karate, I also have instructor certification in Eskrima, which is a Filipino martial arts weapon fighting. And I also have an international certification from Satori Martial Arts as an internationally accredited instructor from a mentor in the United States. So, yeah. So
Wow.
And it just keeps going.
Wow. So you're not just showing up each week and doing your training, you are adopting this as part of your lifestyle.
Oh yeah, no, it is from the very start. It's part of me and part of what I do. It's it's what I'm most passionate about, and because of because of what it's given me and the change it's made to me, it's enabled what I do as an instructor. I can now give back. I can now help others. It's taken me from being an introverted, quiet person to someone that's still introverted but now used to standing in front of a class talking like we are here. I can help others in doing that. I can share my journey. I can share what I know. I can help help them make their lives better, so and bring out the best in them. And that's that teaching and mentoring role is something that was so unexpected when I first started. I just did it for training. I never would have thought that if you had told me that I would even be a black belt, I would have said you were totally crazy. So, yeah.
Wow. So, in itself, without even talking about any other part of your story, that is a huge transformation for you as a person to be stepping into that strength, really, that position of being able to help others go through that similar transformation.
It's really incredibly powerful. Like I said, I never could have envisioned where I would have ended up being, and my story is not finished. I'm still training, and it's simply because I just kept putting one foot in front of the other and kept taking opportunities as they came along to get further training or to work with different people. Not only that, but to just push myself out of my comfort zone, to be uncomfortable, to be afraid, to just take on, whatever the next challenge was, and get over fear of being in front of people, fear of talking, fear of being not fit enough or good enough or strong enough or too old. You name it. I've overcome all of those things, which has helped me with everything else that I do in life as well.
So, as somebody who started martial arts training very young myself, I did 3 different disciplines. I was in a dojo that we did karate, we did jiu-jitsu, we did judo, and we also did kung fu. And for me, one of the instructors pulled me out. I used to do it with my sister, and he pulled me aside and he said, I believe you need to be doing kung fu. I don't want you doing karate anymore. I still want you doing the jiu-jitsu and judo because I believe those skills will help you, but there's something different about you. And for him, kung fu was his specialty, and he said the spiritual connection and the emotional connection, I think, is a really good fit for you. And at the time, I didn't understand it, and I was a little bit hesitant because I was like, well, I'm quite young and I'm here with my big sister and you're separating me and what's going on. And yet he was so right. And there is such a deep journey that you go into with yourself.
Yep.
When you get in the zone of training in martial arts. Tell us a little bit about that experience for you.
I wasn't expecting to go on that journey at all. As I say, I was looking for something to keep fit, something that I wouldn't get bored with, because just going to the gym or doing different fitness classes, well, it's okay for a bit, but, my brain would just get bored. So from the start, I was just immersed in it. I would just be, you go to the class and you don't think about anything else while you're there. You just don't. You're just in the zone. It just was such great stress relief. Because being in a high pressure, high stress job, it was just perfect for what where I was at the time. it just allows you to step into another world, if you like, away from, you leave the outside world behind, and you just go in there and you train and you learn. The things that I found that I just didn't expect was the whole journey. Martial arts is different from a lot of sports. Other sports have elements in it, but it's part of what we do and part of the training that we do. It's the body, mind, and spirit element of it, and that's just all me. That was just part of what I was looking for, that I didn't even know I was looking for that. It turns out that I was. I didn't even know that that's where I would find that. And it just has allowed me to bring out the inner strength that I have. It has allowed me to believe in myself. It has given me back my self-confidence and self-esteem that was just so destroyed. And it is, and because of all of that, because of all of the things that it's given me, that has allowed me to go on and now give back to other people, and all the lessons that I've learnt along the way of what you can do, and that there really are no limitations to what you can do. You're only limited by your mind and your heart as to what you can do. And that's the thing, we create so many limits for ourselves, and we let other people create limits for us as well. Part of being in martial arts too is the people, that if you, apart from all the stuff that you find for yourself, the physical journey and the spiritual journey and the mental journey, it's the amazing people in martial arts. And as soon as you walk in the door of a martial arts club and become part of it, you realise that I've got the most fantastic friends and the most fantastic mentors and people all over the country that I've met that I train with and spend time with, and they're just it's just such a positive, supporting and encouraging place. It was totally different to where I was living, and I just didn't expect any of that at all. So I felt at home straight away.
So I'm hearing a number of things in the words that you're using, and what you've just explained there, that connection of mind, body, soul, spirit, just that whole spherical existence that we have, all of those parts of our existence coming together. And I believe, having, like I said, done martial arts from a young age, and then I came back to it when I was in my early 40s as well, that coming into a space where you have people that are connected on that deeper level, it is something that can be, for some people, quite intimidating if they're not used to that connection. When you immerse yourself in that culture, when you, like you said, form those connections to people on that level, I believe a lot of that is because when you are doing martial arts, you have to be present with yourself and with your inner core. And a lot of the words that I heard you using throughout already the interview is that low self-esteem, those self-doubts, those self-limiting thoughts. Now, on the outset, you're a lawyer. A lot of people would wonder why you have those thoughts. Haven't you made it? So in your case, what was it that was going on? Where did that come from for you? Where did those self-limiting beliefs come from? Where was that disconnection to that confident person?
Well, and that it took me a long time, unfortunately, to work out where all of that was. I guess it really, and part of the being a professional and having, I'm a professional, I have lots of clients, and you think that means that you should have it all together and you should be just this wonder super person, and that how can you be, not have it together and not have self-esteem and stuff like that. That keeps you trapped in that bad place for so long that it's really hard to get out. You judge yourself so poorly, and it's just you deal with shame because you feel like you haven't got it together. There's so much in there about that, but I think it probably started at school when I was bullied at school at a young age, at primary school, And that was damaging. Obviously, anybody,
Mm,
you know, who's been bullied at school, you know, my boys have been through that too. Like, it's just so damaging.
it is.
But it was really, you know, you move on from that, and you go on, and you still you carry those scars with you, and sometimes you learn to get over them, and sometimes you don't. But the thing that was that really sort of kept all of that in place was the long-term relationship that I was with my ex-husband, you know, for over 30 plus years, which was just full of emotional and psychological and abuse, and towards the end some physical abuse. And
Mm,
you believe all the things that you're told, and you can't see a way out. And you think that everything that goes wrong is your fault. You think that you're a bad mother, a bad wife, a bad person, and you just get trapped, you know, in that place. And it takes you, well, takes you forever. It's taken me more than half of my lifetime to deal with that and finally get out of there. I think, I mean, as I say, I came from a family that was very loving, and you know, I have a wonderful family, but I think things that happened at school set me up for not believing the good things about myself. You don't believe that you're good. You don't believe that you're worthy. You don't believe that you're good enough, or that you deserve stuff. Even so, I went on and got a law degree and started, you know, practice, and I run my own practice. I've run my own practice for like 26 years
yeah.
plus. But you don't see that. And that this is the thing, you just, that's your normality. So you don't, because you've got someone there who is on you all the time, and picks up all the little mistakes that are not necessarily, they're just life things. They're not necessarily mistakes, but you just think that you can't make it worth, and you're just not you just don't have it all together, and you never have it all together, and you're not good enough, and it's just like a broken record that plays. And unless you've been in that situation, it's hard to understand how debilitating that is. And it's just a struggle to get through every day. You just
Mm,
get up and you're in this loop, and your life becomes this loop. There's never getting out of the loop. Everything's a battle. There's lots of things that go on inside that loop, but essentially get up, and you just try your best to get through that day and go to sleep, and then you get up, and
yeah.
it just keeps going, and going, stuck in that place for a very long time.
Mm,
And you don't see, like, it's only since, you know, I've left there, only in the last few recent years, that you allow yourself to actually see who you are and what you've done and what you actually have accomplished, and that you feel you can actually take on board that, well, just even me saying here, I've run my own practice for 26 years. I never said, oh, well, not to, you know, you sort of think that you can't celebrate that, but that's you should be proud of that. Anybody should be proud of that,
yeah.
but you feel like you can't, you don't want to take that on at all. It's an awful thing.
Mm. You again bring up some interesting points there, and you were in this relationship for a long time. Did the abuse start early now that you look back? Because my
Yeah.
experience, yeah, my experience has been that it's something that it creeps up on you, and when you're in love, or you believe you're in love with this person, we don't always see that initially. And so, therefore, these patterns of behavior, this manipulation, this psychological manipulation, and the emotional manipulation, and all of these ways that they get to you, you get to a point. Well, I got to a point, and in my experience talking to a lot of women, is that they get to a point where by the time they sort of feel like something's really wrong, they're numb because, like you said, they're in that daily loop.
Mm, mm,
And it becomes much harder to recognize what's going on when you're in the thick of it, when you're walking on eggshells, when you're just waiting for that explosion to
mm,
happen, or you're just waiting for that offensive speech and
mm,
language and putting
mhm,
down and everything that
mhm.
happens in that
It's
situation.
not. It's the word I use to describe it to myself and whatever. It's insidious. It doesn't start out like that, and you don't even know that it's abuse. You just
Yeah.
think it's normal. It's just what your normal world looks like.
Yeah.
You're isolated from friends and family. There's only you and them, and you know, I'd like to think about it. It's like you've got all these pots on the stove, and they're all about to boil, and you're just trying to keep a lid on it, or trying to stop them all from boiling over, because there's so many things. And then and they're just the ones that you're dealing with, like home and work and whatever. And then you add kids into the mix, and there's more, and you're just like this all the time, trying to just keep it all on a level thing. And of course it doesn't.
Yeah.
Pretty soon one of them's going to explode or blow over or whatever, and then there's a catastrophe, and you know, way it goes, and it's a whole, and then you just it's just goes on and on and on and on. And it's not like it does creep up on you. It's not like, looking back now, I can see the red flags and think, oh God, you know, but you're not looking for that, and it takes you so long before you even get to the point of, I remember, well, it probably took me, God, 20 years before for some reason I started looking at it thinking, is this abuse? Like, and then you think you're crazy. How can I be a person that's being abused? And that means my kids are being abused, and how can that happen? And so you don't want to believe that that's you, that's like something you see on TV. You don't want to believe that that's your life. And then you come back to it, and you look through the things. This is what emotional abuse is. Tick, 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 tick. This is what cycle, tick, tick, tick. And then you put that away again, and it's probably 2 years before you pick it up, because you just don't want to believe it. You just don't want that to be you. You can't face it, you know.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly hard.
It is very hard, and the word insidious is a perfect word to describe that situation, as is your visual picture you've just put in my mind about the pots, all these pots just about ready to boil over and explode. And that is what it is like in the middle of it, because your attention is focused on trying to stop those explosions happening. And so you spend most of your time focusing on that. It's almost a distraction technique, if you like, that you can't pay attention to all these other things, because you're here trying to stop the explosions everywhere. And the interesting part about this is that the abuser is the one controlling the environment, the one controlling almost our thoughts at that point when you've been in it for so long. And yet we're the ones that feel responsible, like we're supposed to control everything.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
But you don't realise that that's what's going on until you start stepping back and having a look. And I think the thing that really, I can't even pinpoint the time when I started really looking at that. I think it was when I was dealing with, there were lots of things going on. I remember that I was dealing with issues with at times when we had, like, going through the recession and the financial downturn, things were going, you had the business, I had the kids, and I was just dealing with overwhelm, and I went and got some counselling for that, which I couldn't possibly tell him about. That was all, I only ended up going for a couple of sessions because I just couldn't keep that under wraps. And I was just totally overwhelmed. My dad died. I never grieved for him properly because I wasn't allowed to do any of that. You're not allowed to have any personal feelings or anything like that because you're just weak. So I deal with, and then I started having physical symptoms from the stress. I developed shingles. I would have mystery pains in, like, my elbow or my knee or something like that. And eventually it takes a long time. You feel like you're just stupid. You look back and think, how can you not see that? But you just, we're in that, you're not given much. Like you said, there's so much going on. There's no time to put those pieces together because your brain's so full of trying to just get through your day. So then I started putting that together. Like, why am I breaking down with these physical things? What's going on? And I worked out that it was physical manifestation from the stress. It was, I was actually, and at one point I was, and I had to keep sort of shutting it down. I was sort of with fearing that, God, one day I'm going to get cancer or something, and then that's going to be it. Or one day, or even worse, he would get cancer or something, and I'd be stuck there or some disease that's going to be long term. I'd be stuck there dealing with him, and oh God. just crazy stuff goes through your head, but you've got to shuttle that down. You can't allow that to grow any of those things at all. So
well, like you said, if you're showing all these emotions and, if you're crying or you're getting emotional or you're not looking like you've got it 100% together.
You're either not emotional, you're too emotional,
That's
or
right.
you're not allowed to get sick, or you can't be, upset, or you've got to be, you can't be happy because then, like,
Yeah,
I don't know how. Sometimes I look back and I think, oh God, how did I manage to get through all of that? I don't know.
Yeah,
you have to survive somehow. But I was just like, I was just a squashed person. That's how I felt. Like my soul was squashed, and I just didn't really know who I was in the end.
Yeah, and there's that loss of self. There's that loss of connection to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point did you work out how to leave that relationship?
Well, I'll take the beginning of the end was when I turned 50. And I think the few years leading up to that, I'd started to work out what the hell was going on, but I still couldn't work out, how to move on from it, or I had two boys, and, I didn't even think about it. And I think looking back now, I think, I didn't want to even go to that place of making a decision or whatever because of them, because they were young, and I just knew that if I did something, it would be this whole, pulling from one to the other, and I just did not want that for them. And as it turns out, the option was more years of trauma and stress for them, but that's a whole other story. But that wasn't like a conscious decision. I think in the back of my mind, I worked that out, and I just couldn't. It wasn't at the forefront to make that decision. So I think the thing that really triggered it off was when I turned 50. 1 month to the day, I went back and signed up at Wickens Martial Arts and went back to training. Right. 1 month to the day. And I thought I was the craziest person on the face of the earth. Who goes back to martial arts training at 50, for God's sake? I remember walking in there, and I was already a black belt. So here I am with a black belt going into this place with all these other young people. I was probably nearly the oldest one there with a black belt on. I hadn't trained for 3 years. Oh my God, I'm thinking, what am I doing? You're an idiot, And that was such a high pressure thing to be in that situation where I was the highest ranked person on the floor, and I just started there.
Yeah.
That was crazy, but that was the beginning of the end, because the feeling in that place, it was so positive and so supportive, and just totally, it was just like alien worlds, totally different to where I was living at home. And that just started, I thought, it just showed me how bad things had really got, because basically my life was work, home, work, home, work, home. This was something that was totally different. And not only that, because I loved it so much and he knew that I loved it, it started to pull away from his control. Which made things worse at home. But anyway, but it gave me a place that was mine. It gave me a place where I was valued, where I built up my self-confidence. I went back. Not only did I just go back to training, I went back. I achieved my first degree. In that sort of first, couple of years that I was there, I started training in Muay Thai. And I started teaching again. So my confidence just went. And I had people there who I developed friendships. They were my friends and would have my back if I had any issues. So because I knew I had them, and I had this place, and I got back in touch with me and who I was. And, I was starting to, that's always a continuing journey. But I knew that I was where I was meant to be, and I shouldn't have ever stopped training. I only did because it got too hard. I was sick of fighting the battles to go to training. So that led to the control starting to be broken, which made him get more and more, things escalated at home. Gap between anybody who, like, every situation's different. Some people have violent outbursts once a week. We would typically have them once every 6 months, or see big explosions, that would be typically once every 6 months. They became closer and closer together over that period of time, because I was doing that. There was no way of stopping that. That was it. I was not stopping. I was going to continue on with my training no matter what, because of what it meant to me and what it did for me. So the final catalyst in all of that was 4 years ago. There was just one of these big explosions with my son. He had him up against the wall, with our son, had him up against the wall, throwing things around the house. And that was, I thought, right, I'm going to work out how to get out of this situation. I'm going to work out I'm going to come up with a plan. But even then, I couldn't even seem to make the decision or make myself do it, You've been trapped in that situation for so long that you still don't believe that you can. Still couldn't see how it was going to happen. You have the explosion, then it comes back down. It's a cycle of abuse. I didn't know about that until, in the last few years before. Then once I discovered that, God, that made everything made sense. I could understand it. So anyway, the cycle goes round again. So in the meantime, I'm working things out. I'm moving things around the house and trying to get stuff right. If I have to sell or whatever, because I was decided I was already doing that. I could do this and that, but I still hadn't put it together. I was just making myself busy and getting rid of stuff that I didn't need. But all of it was to keep busy, because the more you keep busy, the more you sort of keep away from him, and the pots just sort of simmer there. You can just keep yourself busy doing stuff. Everything's going to be all right. But then we had one final explosion, and that was 3 days before my youngest son's birthday, and it was just over nothing. It was just ended up being this whole thing where basically, yelling and chasing around head. But in the end of it, he threw the phone, hit the head, and like bleeding from the head and whatever. And it was like, and you think, how can it take you like that long to work it out? But I tell you what, when that hit my head, it was like I was standing in the middle of the MCG and all of the lights went bang, they went on.
Yep.
What am I doing? This is going to only get worse.
Yeah.
Because there hadn't been hardly any physical violence, maybe a bit of grabbing or something like that, never hitting or anything like that. But it was just like something out of a movie. On the MCG, all the lights went on. Right, this is stopping now. Whatever happens, we're going. We're leaving, we're going.
Wow.
So, don't need even, that's a whole other horror story. But 20 days later, we were gone, out, done. Packed up, and we left. But before that, we still had more stuff to go through. Basically, we left in what we stood up in one night. And in that time, I still had coming to terms to it. I rented a house. I still had to force myself to push the button to sign the lease, to deal with all of that. He knew nothing about it, because if he had it, he was every day, because we were just the control level, he was just getting more and more unhinged. Like, it was just the most scary time I've ever been through my whole entire life. It was the most bizarre thing.
Domestic violence is a very scary situation to be in, particularly when women are often at a lesser height and stature than the men who are essentially holding them captive to this life of control and fear. It is also important to note that men are equally as susceptible to domestic violence relationships as women, being held captive to a life of control, manipulation, emotional abuse, often financial abuse. There is such a feeling of being trapped. There is often a feeling of being very, very isolated and alone within that environment. And as someone who has gone through a very abusive relationship, I understand the chaos it creates within your own mind, constantly being told that you're the one who's crazy, constantly being told that you're the one who doesn't remember it right, that you're the one who's making that behavior happen. And the type of master manipulator who controls other people for their own gain, they are very experienced often at this sort of mind warfare. A lot of it is based around distraction and hoping that you don't become aware that this is abuse and that you stay unaware of your right to leave that relationship and be safe in your life, instead of feeling like every single thing you do, you are walking on eggshells, you are walking on broken glass. There is light at the end of the tunnel if you can share what's going on with someone outside that home environment, someone who is in the professional field of helping people like you, like Diane, like myself. If it weren't for the services that I reached out to, I may never have fully recovered from the extent and the trauma of that situation that I found myself in. One of the most dangerous times is trying to leave. If you are in a situation where you feel that you are being abused, it is important to reach out to professional services for help. Some of the services available in Australia include White Ribbon Australia, Australia-wide Domestic Violence Resource Centre, Lifeline, and the 1-800-RESPECT, which is the National Sexual Assault, Family and Domestic Violence Counselling line. I encourage anybody who is going through this extremely difficult situation to please reach out for help. You are not alone. Based on the statistics for people who do reach out for help, we know there are so many more who do not. Please, I implore you, if you are listening and you're one of those people, male or female, who are in a relationship that is abusive, please try and contact someone to help you. You are not alone. You are worthy. We care for you.
It finally forced me. So, right, I looked at all the stuff I have to do. I looked at the figures. Right, I can make this work. Bang. I didn't care. We're going. I said, we're leaving with nothing. I don't care what it is. We just went. 20 days later, we were gone because that was coming up close to Christmas. I said to the boys and myself, there is no way we are spending Christmas having another pretend holiday, like where everybody's happy and it's happy families and whatever. We'd had years of those. Yeah. No way we're having Christmas in this house, and we didn't. 23rd December we were out. So, yeah.
So a lot of what you're describing there with the escalation is another pattern and cycle that happens in that once they start seeing you gain that confidence and they start seeing you get that strength, that inner strength, then they will ramp up because they're actually at that point where they realize they're going to lose that hold, they're going to lose that control. And one of the biggest factors for needing that extra time and having trouble, signing that lease and actually physically separating is that fear. That's that underlying fear. And you're going through this situation where that violence is escalating. For me, it seems very much like that moment, like you've described it, like all those floodlights basically have lit up every aspect of that fear at once. And you got to that point where you went, you know what? I see it for exactly what it is. For the first time, I see it, and I am now going to recognize that whatever fear I have of the consequences of us leaving is overridden by everything that has just hit me in that one moment.
That was it. There was just no going back from that point. There's no way I was going to be continue on, and that's where like the martial arts, training thing, like not only give me the self-belief and the self-confidence, it showed me that I was strong enough to do it. It gave me that inner strength that I could get through this, and if I needed to, I had people that would help me, right? And so it's just you know, it gave me that belief in myself, because of the challenges I've been through in doing that, you know, I could sign it, I could do it, because there's no way and having that big, massive light bulb moment, that I knew that there's no way, there's no turning back. It was only one way forward. I was burning the bridges. That was it. It was no, you know, unfortunately, like there's so many, you know, there's so many women who have that, and then they go back and they take 6, 7 times. You know, that's a typical story. You know, and that probably would have been me if I hadn't had that whole other journey going on to get up to that. But there was no turning back at that point for me. So, yeah.
So I'm curious, through all of this, obviously your children knew what was going on and they were in fact part of that cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Who else knew? Who had you told, if anybody?
Nobody.
And why? Why had you not shared that? I mean, this is a massive part of your life, and this is something that has affected you at such a deep level, in that even your connection to yourself had been essentially severed for so long.
Yep.
And this is a question I get asked a lot, so I know you understand. Why did you not tell anyone?
Because I couldn't. Because now I know that if I had it was normal. That was what my reality was like. But I knew that it wasn't. But if I told somebody, I would be admitting to myself the life that I was living. I was living this, and I knew I was, because I would lie to, like, how was your weekend? You know, the girls at work would say, yeah, good, we did this, that, and the other. Weekends were horrendous. They were a nightmare. I couldn't wait to get back to work, because the weekend was just constantly, it was you were just like trapped. Oh, it was horrendous. And that's not even the right word to describe it. I was just, and my family, I never told them, you know, and it was just, I was ashamed, and I hadn't owned up to exactly where I was to myself. So how could I possibly own up to anybody else that what was going on? And I felt that they would judge me. Everybody else, you know, had their lives together, and you know, all of that stuff. Like the girls at work didn't even know, but they knew the night that we walked out in what we stood up in was our Christmas breakup party. When I got home from that, and there was a whole other explosion. So we walked out with there. I stayed with one of the girls from work. They came and helped me the next day pack up our personal belongings, and we were out of there. They had no clue. They'd been working for me for years. You know how long my girls have been there? All that 20, 18, 15 years. They had no idea. My family didn't even know till I told them that they had been, when the whole thing was starting to blow up. They had a bit of an idea, because there'd been a time. When I look back on my notes, it's really weird. I'd write stuff down. I'd have to like get it out of my head. And I'd go back, and there's been 2 years before that, I'd written all this stuff down, because there was a big thing happening then. And a year before that, I'd written stuff down. So they sort of had a little bit of an idea that there was a problem, but they had no real clue. I couldn't possibly tell them.
Yeah. And that's a lot of pressure, having to keep such a massive part of your life and your existence really a secret from other people. And it's no wonder that when we're in that state, we're in that cycle. On top of it, we're trying not to let anyone know.
Yep.
How can we possibly be thinking logically?
Well, you've got this. You're living this whole double existence. Like you've got this. You're just living this facade that you've got up to the world, that everything's great, and behind it, it's a frigging disaster zone, of massive proportions. And and it's not only me that's got to put up that pretense and that wall. It's, you know, my boys had to as well. And that is, I mean, I'll just take that to my grave. I've had to forgive myself for putting them through that. I've had to forgive myself for all of that and the damage that it's done to them. You know,
and have you?
I have at one level, but there's another level. I just, as a mother, you just, you know, you bring them into the world, and you know, you only want what's best for them. You don't want them to have horrible, bloody upbringing. It's not their fault,
It's not your
and
fault
they tell me,
either.
they tell me it's not your fault. It's not your fault, but there's a small part of you that that just hangs on to it. But no, I have.
Yeah.
I mean, that because I have done that, that's allowed me to make big strides in healing and stuff like that. It's not something that keeps me awake at night now. Even though it used to. It's a long, and that whole long road out of it, that's that's a whole other grieving process to get yourself over and get around. So but I was, I'm fortunate, like birth, and the thing was I judged myself far more harshly than anybody else judged me. Like, I never told anybody because I thought that they would think, God, how could you do that? How could you stay there for so long? Why didn't you just leave? Why didn't all of this stuff? And all I got was when I told my family and told the girls at work, all I got was love and support. They were there. They'd been there behind the scenes the whole time, just waiting for me to reach out and say, this is the shit I'm living in. I need some help. I'll never forget, like that Christmas, we'd been out of the place for 2 days. We went down and the boys had their first family Christmas they'd ever had in their whole entire life, with lots of people, love, happiness. And it was just the most, they could not believe it. And it was just the most amazing thing. I'll never forget it.
It's
Walking down there
like
and being embraced by my family. And, they were so absolutely overjoyed that we were there and we were back. And
it's another light bulb moment.
Oh yeah. So to anybody out there who's thinking that they're going to be judged and are ashamed of where they are or whatever, you will have friends, you will have family. There will be somebody there who is waiting for you. And all you've got to do is you look at hear so many stories, and if you follow people in forums and stuff like that, so many times it's all the same. There will be somebody there waiting for you to turn around and say, hey, this is where I am, I need some help. And they will be right there waiting for you, because there's so many people that you see in those forums, like my friends is, how can I help, what can I do? And unfortunately, until they reach out, there's nothing you can do, because they've got to get to that place where they're ready to seek help. And all you can do is be ready, just be waiting.
Yeah, and be able to receive. And that, I think, is a journey in itself, because when you're in this situation, it's give. Everything is give from you, and you don't feel like you can receive. And so that is a new journey and experience to be in that spot, like you said, to actually realize you now want to go and get help, and that you can, and to reach out. And then the hardest part is actually allowing that help. And whether that's from loved ones, people that you know, or whether it's from strangers and professionals that this is what they do, that is a journey in itself.
That's huge, because a big part of it is you've always felt like you don't deserve, and you just need to be, you just got to get on with it and just deal with it, and you're strong enough to deal with it, and everybody else deals with it. Why am I worried about it? And what's wrong with me? And that's just part of the psychology, like and I can't, and I know it's been like 3.5 years for us since we got ourselves out of that situation, and I get people telling me, like my sisters and the girls, they just can't believe how far that we've come and how changed we all are, because of it. So it's amazing. It's really simply amazing.
Yeah. So I feel that I have to ask, what has been the consequence in terms of that relationship with him? Like, has he come back at you guys? Has he fought this separation?
No. The way that I dealt with all of that is that I decided when I was making all of these decisions, that the way that I was going to deal with it is that there was not going to be any more fighting with anything. It was going to be all dealt with. We had to sell a house. We had to separate all of the joint stuff, which was a lot. And I was fortunate that I had some mutual friends that were his friends, and a couple. They acted as like a middleman and set the tone for any conversations that we would have, which were minimal on my point. I just to hear the sound of his voice was like, I just had to steel myself every time and get centered but they were controlled. He wasn't to discuss certain things, wasn't to have to go off about certain stuff. And because of that, I worked out that how to manage it in a positive way. And because this was going to be how it was going to be done, and we got through all of that with me. I haven't seen him since the day I walked out of there. I've only had those few conversations, and I'm lucky. He went. I think he went and got some help or whatever. We had this couple that would help, that would sort of kept things on an even keel, and they gave him advice and told him, well, you really need to deal with it. It's going to have to be done. You need to deal with it. And they paved the way for it all to be, dealt with in, like I guess a business-like manner, if you like. Things had to be signed and whatever. So I dealt with it because I knew him so well and obviously knew what would trigger him. I was able to manage it. So I managed it in a way that it would be as smooth as possible. But of course, for me, every time I had to send something or do it, was just that 12 months was just the most horrific journey, like from just dealing with everything. Like we had to try and sell a house, we had to list it, we had to clear it out. We had to work out how to do all of that without seeing him and navigating around all of that. That same year, I was training for my second degree black belt, which is what's called the martial arts marathon. No one that I was training with had knew that I'd left that situation, or they had no idea what I was going through. It's called the martial arts marathon. It's 23-minute rounds. So that's sparring, pad work, what I had to train to be, and it's a grading I never thought I'd ever do. I had to be the fittest I'd ever been in my life to get through it. And at the start of that, I thought, because here I am dealing with all this stuff, this separation stuff, trying to run a business. I had one son headed off to uni, the other one's going through year 11. We're dealing with all this trauma and breakup and whatever. But anyway, I set myself for this journey, this martial arts journey, because I figured I needed to get myself to keep strong and stay through all of that. And the grading was in October, at the end of October, and I set myself the goal I would not stand on that grading floor and attempt that grading unless I had gone through all of that, unless I'd resolved all of that, unless I had the house at least listed for sale, if not sold. As long as I'd done all of that, I felt that I was worthy to stand on that grading floor. And I did it, doing that. And I smashed it out that day. And people still talk about that grading because I was in tears doing it.
I bet.
There was people, I remember one of my friends, she said to my coach there, is she all right? Because I was just crying through the sparring because it was just such a big emotional release. It was just a whole physical, it all just came out. Going, yeah, she's all right, she's she's okay. But she said, she's like one of my closest friends now, and she said the energy that was in your group that day, she said, I've never seen anything like, I've only seen that a couple of times before. And she since knows the story, but she knew there was something going on. And that was one of the proudest days of my life. So that was huge. So that's sort of where it all ties in, and that whole, being a martial artist and stepping into that and using that strength that got me through all of that personal shit,
I just had such massive waves of emotion coming over me then. I so relate to that. And you alluded to it before, martial arts is in a class of its own in this aspect. There are elements of this connecting to yourself and going through those battles, if you like, and becoming a warrior. And I often talk to people about being in touch with their inner warrior. That's that place inside where everything might be in chaos, and yet you find that extra. You find that extra little bit of strength in there that you didn't think you had. And I get such overwhelming feelings of courage for what you did. I mean, going through all of that and then doing such a high level of training. I understand
Crazy person,
that.
that's what I am.
Yeah. Well, good on you, because obviously you recognize somewhere, even if it wasn't conscious all the time, that this was that connection and that strength that was going to help you get through. And
I knew it. Yeah, I knew it then. I knew that I would need it. I knew that I would need every bit of that to get through it. And that's, I just dragged myself through that grading because to get myself through all the other stuff. For me, the two were tied together, you know. Yeah. And I remember doing that training, and I'd get to, some weeks were so bad, and I'd get there and I'd have to do, you know, pad work, 15 rounds of pad work or something. And I remember, and I'd say to my training partners, I'm not going to do it. And they're going, well, get stuck into it. And once I started, I was okay. But when I finished it, I'd be okay. I would not have, I don't think I would have got through it as well as I did without doing that, without setting myself that extra goal of doing it. But that was, guys, looking back now, that was far out. That was a tough year.
Yeah. And how wonderful that you had this community of people that understood that part of the journey, even if they didn't know everything else that you were going through.
Yeah. No,
and to have that connection. Yeah, that's wonderful.
I'm very blessed. Yeah. I know the most wonderful people.
Now, I have to ask, because I can see artwork behind you, and I know that you've been putting up quite a few different paintings and things.
Yeah.
Is this something that you were able to do during the marriage? Is this something that you've started doing now? And I just want to link back to you talking about those times that you wrote because you had to get it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there any link with your artwork to getting stuff out?
I think there probably was, because it was in later years in the marriage that I started doing, getting back to artwork. I'd forgotten that I even enjoyed doing that as a kid. And what started it was my youngest son. He's a really fantastic artist. He started going to art classes, and I saw, and it was such a outlet for him. I think it just gave him a really quiet space to deal with stuff.
Yeah.
And it was something that gave him happiness and joy. And I thought, they had art class. I'm going to go and do that. So off I went, and I reconnected with it and started doing it. So so ever since then, I think I went through like 3 or 4 years of art classes, which was really good. And I just found it was just such a zen space. I just lose myself in it like anything else. And so now I still do a bit every now and again. The last few years I haven't been quite as busy with that because I've had lots of other things going on. But at the moment, we also, my sister started painting with Mum virtually once she was in care to give her something else to do. So we paint at least 2 or 3 times a week. My sisters and I, we'll get there and we paint on Facebook Messenger. Mum doesn't paint, she can't do it, but she loves watching. So it's just an activity to keep her busy and occupied. So that's where all those paintings come from that you've seen. They're our little art creations that we put together. So yeah.
Fantastic. What a beautiful way to keep that connection, even if you can't physically go in to see her with everything at the moment. That's a beautiful way to do that.
And it's we started off doing it for her, and we just love it. It's just made our connection so much stronger and everything else. And it's a special time for all of us. We really enjoy it.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Pleasure.
It's been wonderful to hear this journey that you've gone on, and I know that so many of the listeners will be inspired.
I'm just me trying to I'll just go through life being me. I'm not like anything special, like some, superstar person or whatever. Like all of the stuff I've achieved in martial arts has just come from putting one foot in front of the other and
Mm-hmm.
believing in myself and growing and being willing to get out of my comfort zone and challenge myself, all it is. And and it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's artwork or music or writing or whatever you do. If you find something that's you, that's connected with who you are, who you really are inside, that you love and have passion for, and just keep doing it. Keep going, and being open to, like, one of the most fantastic things that I did in that journey was last year. I went to the Dominican Republic and to teach martial arts and self-defense and personal protection empowerment to women and girls in the Dominican Republic. That was just I would never have thought that I would be doing anything like that. And that came about from the lady, that Tanya Rowan, that's my friend now, who saw me on that second degree grading day. She noticed me and what I was doing and asked me to join the thing and develop a program with her. And there we are, 12 months later, we went into the Dominican Republic and did this program, and just blew me away. It's amazing. Wow. So you just never know what doors are going to open if you start doing something you love, and where that's going to take you. So yeah.
So true, so true. And this is what I love. This series is about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and everybody starts their life as an ordinary person, and it's all about our belief and our connection to ourselves, our belief in ourselves, and, like you said, finding that thing that lights us up inside, finding that passion, and then having the strength and the courage to be uncomfortable, to step into that fear and do it anyway, which is the definition of courage. And courage will get you a long way. And then the rest is consistent effort, determination, and showing up. Yeah,
that's it. Yep, just keep doing it. Keep putting the left foot in front of the right foot and repeat. That's it.
yeah, that's it. And repeating a good cycle, a cycle that lifts you up and supports you. And
Yep, with people that encourage you and support you along the way.
Yeah. And how wonderful that now, coming out the other side of it, and I understand 3.5 years, I'm 18 years out of my situation. There is, as you said, a long journey. However, it is a journey filled with many different opportunities, and with each year that passes, you heal that little bit more, and you have come that bit further, and the person that you embrace yourself to be at different parts of this journey is something that you share with other people. Like you said, you share it with your students, you share it with people in your inner circle, in your outer circle, and that shows what a compassionate person you are, to be able to take that journey where you had to connect to your inner strength allows you now to help others do the same.
Yeah, that's pretty much what keeps me going, and what I intend to be doing with the rest of my life is trying to do what I can to inspire and help others. So if there's something that I can do to help that along, well, then that makes me very happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know that you're working on your website, is that right? Yep. And that's Chaos to Clarity.
It is. So we've got some things happening there soon. So I'll be making sure to let you know about that, so you can let all your listeners know about that, because we're going to have some courses and things coming up with that very soon.
Wonderful. Well, I'll definitely put those links in the description when this episode releases. And from all the listeners and myself, we wish you well.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
You're welcome. What an uplifting story. And the thing I love about these conversations, and with talking to Diane, it still blows my mind that we were both going through a similar situation. I'd just come out of my relationship. She was still in the thick of hers, and neither of us spoken a word about it until 11 odd years later. Wow, you just never know what may be going on in other people's lives that they are feeling unable to share. And I encourage you again that if you are in a relationship and you're not sure if there's abuse or not, or you know that there is abuse going on, and you feel like if you get the help you might just be able to leave, then please, 1-800-RESPECT in Australia. If you can speak to somebody to get the help that you need. And I love that martial arts was the thing, like the glue that held Diane together. And it makes sense with the strong mind-body connection in doing martial arts. There are many sports where you can achieve the same connection to yourself, to your inner warrior. There is hope. There is connection available. The 3 words I use to describe the WhyMe podcast, think of ICE, inspire, connect, empower. Your hope may only be a phone call away. I also would like to take this opportunity to explain that when I was going through my situation, I found it very difficult to verbalize what I'd gone through, and specifically the sexual assaults that were within that marriage and abuse, and is often a part of the domestic violence cycle. So feeling unable to speak the words of the trauma that I had experienced, I connected to myself within my artistic and creative mechanism, which I hadn't done for many years. And to my delight, I discovered that I was able to communicate so many emotions and things that had happened through my artwork. First, they started as stick figures, and then they progressed to full-on transformative pieces of art, which I now make available for other people. And I truly believe that when you feel so strongly and put that into some form of communication, for me, the art practice made sense because these things happened to my body and I was allowing my body to do the talking for me. If you would like more information on what I do as an artist and how I use that process, even to today, to release certain emotions at different times, and also to create exclusive pieces of artwork for people who've gone through their own defining moments. This is a service that I have a intuitive skill for and have been doing for some time. I am now publicly offering those services to people who, if they feel comfortable discussing that defining moment with me, I then create an amazing piece of artwork that they can walk past every single day. I mean, imagine waking up and walking past this piece that reminds you of that inner warrior, that reminds you that you can inspire yourself, that you have that connection. If you would like more information, you can contact me on my social media, Facebook or Instagram at Vera-Lee Original, or you can go to WhyMeMovement.com.